All right, good afternoon, everybody. We'll just give it another moment here for some folks to get themselves connected to the webinar before we jump into everything. While we're waiting for more people to get themselves connected, I'll just note that you'll find there's no audio for you in the webinar. If you've attended one of these before, that's probably starting to be familiar. There is a chat module, so if you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, feel free to use the chat there and I'll be able to see those. Any questions that get dropped in there, if they're not answered throughout the webinar, then we can look into to getting back to you on with an answer there for any specific questions. Today's webinar is on website modules and web pages and menus. So we want to take a look at how we can configure menus in the system, how you can configure your content modules on your homepage. And we'll take a look at this from the perspective of two different site layouts. Goalline does have multiple layouts of sites, and so we'll take a look at kind of whatever site you have, how you're going to manage the content that you want to place on your site. So it looks like we have a few more people rolling in, and you'll be sent a recording of the webinar as well at the end, so that you can watch it later if necessary. And throughout the webinar today, you'll see our Goalline YouTube channel as well, where I typically go in and make sure that our webinars are uploaded there too. So if you didn't register before the webinar, you should still be able to get access to the content from the webinar. So we'll get started here today. My name is Amanda Vellutini, and I am going to be walking you through web pages and content modules on your Goalline site. The site that you're looking at right now is my favorite demo site to use, my Northeast Athletic Officials Association site, and we're going to be looking at how we can configure the menu that we see here in the top. So our top menu is divided into two separate rows. So there's the top menu first row, which is where my About page happens to be. And then there is the top menu second row, where my site here, we've got some tournament registration forms, referee login, some standard items. So there's a mixture here of web pages that have been created within the site, and standard items such as divisions listings and rep team listings, registration forms, master schedules, all kinds of standard items that come part and parcel with your Goalline platform. And so we'll take a look at how we can configure that menu. I'm going to hop over to a silver layout website just to talk about how we're going to be manipulating these menus, but it's the same idea, the same concept here. So we have a top menu that goes horizontally here, and there's a top row and a second row for those menus. And there is a small difference between the menu items in the top row on this particular layout compared to the other layout that we have. And the difference there is that when we have additional sub pages to web pages, they can pop out in a different way. So the website or web page option does give you an additional layer of menu on the silver layout. And then we'll also take a look, just going back to the gold layout, we're going to take a look at how we update these modules here, which are referred to as call out boxes. So there's a left, a center, and a right call out box here. These can be populated, with a bunch of different types of content. If we look at the silver layout, we have all kinds of content modules here as well. And so we'll take a look at what content can be placed into each and every one of those modules and the differences between what you can do on your gold layout versus the silver layout. The main difference is going to be, as I mentioned already, the second layer of menu when it comes to your menu items and having that sort of third, people often call it a flyout menu. The other difference is going to be in the content that's available to place into the modules that are below. There are more options for what you can place in the modules below when you're using the silver layout compared to the gold layout. The gold layout, these are a lot more static. So typically organizations using this layout are going to want these to be populated with some important, easy to access information. And there's various ways ways for you to have a similar amount of content on your homepage in the Goalline or Gold layout by using some of the other site configuration modules. So we're going to dive in and get started first by looking at how we create web pages. This is exactly the same on any site layout that you have in Goalline. So I'm going to start in my Northeast Athletic Officials Association. Where I'm going to find website or web pages is in the website tab of my menu. You can create web pages at different levels of the menu. Today's focus is going to be on placing those web pages into the home page. So we're doing this at the master menu, which is sort of the association wide. It's the home page stuff. But then we'll show just kind of what that placement looks like if we were to create a web page within one of our league or team specific menus, because you can still do that. Creating the pages is exactly the same. The difference is going to be in the placement. So in our website content section, we can see we have a create web page option and a manage web pages option. The difference is this just brings us to the form to create a brand new web page, and manage web pages lets us look at a list of our existing web pages so that we can edit or remove them from the site or reorder them if necessary. So I'm going to click on create web page, and we'll talk about the web page editing options that you have available. And these are going to be fairly familiar because anywhere that you can edit the content on a page or in a different module in Goalline, you're going to see a very similar editor here. We often call it the WYSIWYG. So what you see is what you get. When you create your web page here, it's going to look almost exactly like that on the public facing side. There are some exceptions to that, and we'll talk about those as we go through. Most of these formatting options are very similar to what you would see in any kind of word processing program. So not a whole lot of groundbreaking going on in here. Things like your copy and paste options. One of the things that I'll point out with copying and pasting, you can absolutely copy and paste content into the description area. But if you just strictly copy, for example, using like Control V or Control C. So if I was to take my my URL and press Control V here, it's going to strip out some of the formatting. And it is going to do that for a lot of different things. And it may look like it's removed all of the formatting for me here. But if I was copying something from a rich or like a fully formatted Word document that has, spacing and indentations and tabs and potentially bullets or numbers, those things don't all copy and paste well. So when it comes to copy and paste, you are going to find you're going to be more successful by using the copy or the paste function here and pasting your text directly into the screen here, and then hit OK to paste that in. And what that's going to do is just clean the formatting for you. There is still the option here to clean your own formatting. This symbol is pretty common across all word processors to strip the formatting out of something. So if you highlight anything, you can choose to manually just clear out that formatting. So if you found that something you copied and pasted didn't display on the public side the way that you expected it to, you might want to just edit that page, highlight the portions that aren't showing correctly, and remove any formatting that maybe is unseen in here that may have pasted in with your copy and paste function. So use this one whenever possible. But if you did paste in something from somewhere else, just take a quick look at it and see if you need to maybe remove some formatting. There are some style options for you to select in here for different heading styles and body text, and whether or not you want those the text to be kind of larger or smaller, so that you can really differentiate the content. If you have a lot of typed in content, a lot of rules and policies and things like that that you may have on your page. So you can use that style option the same way as you would in a Word program or Google Docs or something to create different levels of headings. You can also update the sizing. So again, smaller, larger. It's not necessarily a font size that you're selecting in here. So that is a little bit different than your typical word processor. But if you wanted fine print, you can go in and put in some extra small fine print. You can make some things larger as well. So using the styles and the size options here, that's what's going to allow you to format your pages with some really good content and have it kind of broken up and looking the way that you'd like. Other things that are going to help you you do that are going to be some of the items over here, such as including tables or having horizontal lines throughout the page. So that's going to create a horizontal line that really helps visually break up sections of information if you happen to have a lot of content on any given page. This one here is just your special symbols. So if you do have any special symbols that you need to include in your page, you're able to select those special symbols here without having to kind of figure out how to get them to appear using your keyboard. So you can insert those special symbols as needed. There are some other ones here that I've skipped over that we'll come back to because those are kind of the meaty ones that we want to talk more about here. Other typical ones are going to be your numbered or your bulleted lists. And with those, you have the options of moving in your indentations. So if you have a bulleted list, I can say, listing, spelling things better would be good. So listing things in a bulleted list. So you can create a bulleted list by highlighting the content just like any other word processor. So I can say that I want to bullet this list, and then I can maybe take these two items and say that I want them to be sub sections of that particular item. So again, not groundbreaking stuff here. I just wanted to point out where you're going to go to do those kind of formatting things when you have lists and sub lists of things that you might be placing on there. Same thing goes if this was numbers instead of the bullets there. So you're able to make those changes there, and you can increase or lower the indentation as needed throughout that bulleted list. Another one that I'll point out in here, well, I guess I'll just comment really quickly. These ones are exactly what they say they are. So your bold, italic, and underline, and then your alignment. So if you wanted things to be centered or left aligned or right aligned, that's the default is typically going to be that everything's going to be left aligned. But if you wanted to change that up, you can certainly do that just by using the items here. The other thing I want to point out is going to be the table option. So tables, when you click to insert a table, it's going to default and ask you kind of how many rows and columns do you want. So 3 rows, 2 columns, and it shows here that that width is going to be 500. This is referring to pixels in the width. And so you can create whatever size table you want. If you need that to be 6 rows and 9 columns, you can make that whatever it is that you need. Let's do 6 rows and 3 columns, and we'll keep this 500 here. One of the little secret tricks that I often use is if you wanted to use a table to really nicely align content, things like sponsor images. It's a really popular one where folks will have a web page dedicated to their sponsor logos. And you might want to have them organized in a nice, easy table, but you might not necessarily want to see the fact that it's a table. So let me just click OK here and enter this in. So because I left everything at the default other than the number of rows and columns that I wanted, I can see the boxes around this. And when we publish this web page, we're going to see those boxes. We're going to see the actual lines in between. But I want to point out that we can create a table using the same functionality, but we can reduce the border size. So the border size is currently set as 1. I can make that much, much thicker and say that it's 10 or 5. But I can also say that the border size is 0. So when I do that, you can see here that we have some kind of faint dotted lines. This is just a guide for us as we're editing this page. This lets us create a table that on the public side is not actually going to show the lines in between. So it allows you to create kind of a grid where you can insert images right into these boxes with the links to whoever your sponsors happen to be without people actually seeing that you put them into a table on the web page. Whether I want to type content here or in any of these modules or boxes within the table, I can type things in there. And when I have anything in there, whether it's text or an image, I'm able to create links to that. And when I do select to create a link, I have some options with what's going to happen. The default is going to be that it's a URL. So we're just expecting that you're linking to a web page somewhere. Excuse me, apologies. That web page could be within your Goalline site, or it could be, any external link. Another option is linking to an anchor in the text, and we'll talk about that one in a little bit. Or we can link to a file uploaded to Goalline. So if I select to link to a file, I'm going to be selecting from a list of previously uploaded files. And these files are added through the tool called Manage Files and Images. So if I wanted this to be a flyer or a policy book or a handbook or I don't know, a physical piece of paper that someone needs to maybe download and print at home to bring to the rink or the soccer field or whatever. Lots of different use cases for linking to files for people to have available. Folks will often use this for things like AGM meeting minutes or board meeting minutes and things like that, so that you have your minutes and people can download a PDF copy of that if you've uploaded it as a file here. The other option in our link to file, link type is going to be email. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's not a super popular option anymore because not everybody's using default email programs in their browsers or on their computers. So using the email link type, what it's doing is it is hyperlinking the email address of the that you're putting in there. But what it's going to try to do if I click on that link is it's going to try to open my default email program so that I can start typing an email to you. Because that's not a super popular way to go, not everybody's going to use the email link option here, but you certainly could. And if you do use it, you have some additional options where if I clicked on it, it would default a little bit of the subject line and the message body for me. So this is used often in cases where, if you're interested in this, go ahead and reach out to this email address. And you can pre-populate that email subject line to say, I'm interested in, whatever it was, I want to know more about your upcoming summer clinics, or I want to know more about that referee clinic, so that the subject line of that email is going to default so that the person has less to do when they want to send an email to that specific email address. Going back to the URL type here, the protocol by default is going to be this HTTP, but you can select some other ones. Typically, this is not something that needs to be manipulated, and you're strictly just going to put in that sort of www dot whatever it is that you want to link to. So if we wanted to have that link to our stacksports.com, we can do that. And I could just say okay here and it's going to create that link. But I might want to make a little bit more of a specific selection here as well. If I go to the target tab, it allows me to select from a couple of different target options. So this is how that link is going to behave. The default is going to be what's called here, it says no set. That means it's just going to take over. If I click on that link, it's going to refresh the page I'm currently on and show me that link. If I want that to open in a new tab, I'm going to select the option here for a new window, the one that has this blank option here. There are certainly some other options that you can select, and you can select for it to be a pop-up window. Generally speaking, pop-up links are not going to be well received by a lot of different browsers, so it's not strongly recommended to use that, but that would create an entirely new sort of pop-up window for that specific link to show up in. But commonly, a new window with the bracket blank option here, this is going to create it so that it will open that link in a new tab of the same browser that you happen to be in. So that's a really good tip to make sure that especially if you're linking to something that's not part of your Goalline site, that option's great because it allows people to click the link, but then not lose where they were on your site. So they don't have to click back to get back to your Goalline site. So we'll say okay there. And now that I've done that, we see the kind of typical option where it turns into a blue underlined link that will behave as a link on the public side, but I can always make adjustments. If I made a typo, I can edit the link again, and it just lets me make a change. So I forgot to put /Goalline. So that's what I want to maybe update that to. If I just want to remove the link, I can do that as well by clicking the link option that has the X in it, which just unlinks what I just did. So that's creating your typical links, but we saw an option in there regarding linking to an anchor. So I want to show you how you can create an anchor. Long text pages need anchors sometimes. More content more and more content. So if we have a lot of content on this page, I might want to change the way that that behaves. So I'm going to turn this into a heading so that we can kind of see down below these couple of boxes and tables that we've created here. I want to create a header, but I want to maybe create an anchor so that I can link to that. So, you know, I can come down here and say, go look at our more content section. And so instead of expecting them to go and find that, I want to link to it so they can click on it and just be taken to that part of the page. So if I highlight this section here and I click on this flag, this is going to create an anchor and I can give it a name. So I'm going to say more content section is the anchor name there. Now that I've created this anchor, we see this little flag. It doesn't really change much of anything as far as how this is going to behave. But now that I've done that, I can say up here, create a link and use the anchor and select the anchor that I just found or just created. So now this is a link to the anchored text that's down below. So lots of use cases for that, especially on pages that give a lot of information about, for example, your typical programming. You may have different sections on, you know, this age group typically has these attributes, or you know, tryouts happen this time and then clinics happen here. And so there's lots of different use cases for having web pages with lots of information. And you just want to give people a nice, quick and easy way to access that information. So depending on how you lay out your page, lots of different ways to get that done. So that's how we create an anchor, and it's as simple as that to link to that anchor. So now let's take a quick look at how we can embed images, and then we'll take a quick look as well at web pages, or sorry, not web pages, embedding video, and then we'll move on to some of the other parts that are outside of managing our web pages here. So let's insert an image. If I want to insert an image into anywhere, really, I put my cursor where I want it, of course, and then I can insert an image. So I'm inside one of the table boxes here, just for fun, and I'm going to click on the button here that says image. And it's going to pop up with the image properties tab right away. And you're going to click browse server. So even if you haven't uploaded the image yet, you're going to click browse server first. And when you click here, it's going to show you a list of all the images that have previously been uploaded to the site. I can easily just double click on one of those images and then look at it. Yep, I like it. I'm happy with that, and say okay. And it inserted that in there for me. If I want to maybe insert another image into another tab of that table, I can do that by just doing the same thing. We'll click browse server, but maybe this time I want to upload a new image that's on my computer. So I'm just going to locate the upload button that's right here, and that's going to do the typical, you know, browse your computer to find an image, upload that image, and then it's right here for me. These are going to be listed in alphabetical order. So it's right here listed for me. So I can just now double click on the image that I just selected. One of the other things that you can do is you can manipulate the width and the height. By default, you should see that the aspect ratio is locked. So we see this little padlock here. I can click on that and unlock that aspect ratio. A little risky sometimes to do that, because then if I change the width but not the height, I might end up with a wonky image. Wonky is the technical term, right? So I want to keep that aspect ratio locked most of the time, but just keep in mind that you are able to make changes there regarding the aspect ratio while you change the width and the height. So if I change the width to 200, because we're locked here, it's going to automatically change the height accordingly. In this case, I had a square image, but if it was a rectangle, it'd be updating accordingly based on the aspect ratio that was originally in there. You can also add things like borders and buffer space around that image. A lot of times that's not necessary because your placement is going to kind of put it in the area that it should be in the first place. So this is how I'm going to select my image. I've changed the size of it a little bit to make it a little bit bigger than it was, and I'll say OK to insert that. And then I'm just hitting tab here to move over into the next sections here. So browsing your server lets you look at all of the images that have previously been used. And if you want the image, you just double click on it, make any adjustments you may need to the height and the width, say OK to insert that image. So these images now are in this table and they're just plain images. But as I click on one of these images, I'm able to go and create a link to that as well. So if I was doing this to create a sponsor's logo table, I would be putting in what my sponsor logo is, my sponsor's website is, so that when people come to this page, they can click on it and go to that sponsor's website. So now this one is going to be a hyperlink that's going to go to stacksports.com. So that's how we insert images, and whether you're doing it inside the table or whether you're just doing it in a normal, like just right on the web page itself, doesn't really matter. Wherever your cursor is, that's where it's going to try to insert that image. The other option we have in here is to be able to embed video. Now, don't be alarmed by the fact that this indicates that it's inserting a flash video, because really it's going to take a YouTube video. So you're going to select you're going to enter the YouTube link and click the insert button. So let's just go over to our Goalline YouTube channel here. We'll click on one of our previously aired webinars, and I'm going to grab the YouTube link here, and I'm just going to copy that link. And then I'm going to head back over to my web page. I'm going to paste that link here, and I'm going to click to insert it. It's going to show me a little preview here. And this preview is going to be just a preview for you to know that you selected the right video. So essentially, I'm seeing whatever that thumbnail would have been on the YouTube channel itself. I can make adjustments here right away and change the size of this video as well. Or I can just allow it to be sort of the default tile, but you're going to be able to make changes to that later on. So once I say OK, this is one of the only things that's not going to show for us as a video in the back end where we're looking right now. So I see this icon here that tells me that there is a video, but I don't see the actual video pulled into the editing view. But once we save this page and go take a look at it on the public side of the site, we'll see how that video is going to display itself. One thing I didn't do yet is give it a title. So I'm going to say sub page for About Us, and then I'm going to select my placement so that we can save this. The placement options are going to be top menu first row. As I mentioned, that's how the rows are labeled. Or it could be top menu second row. Or it could be not displayed on the menu at all. So that still creates the page. It still exists. It still gets its own URL. So you are able to create links that go to that page, even if you did not choose to place it in your menu. Not displayed on menu does not make it unavailable. Just to make sure that that's clear. The other options that we see here are basically all of the other web pages that exist, and I can create subpages to my web pages. So if I selected the About page, this is going to create a subpage to the About page. I can also select things to make things submenus or subpages of things in the second row, but they do behave a little bit differently. So if I really want this to be accessible right away when I hover over that About Us page, I want to make sure that I make it a direct web page right there. So I'm going to select that placement here. And we'll talk about some of these other options here shortly. So I'm going to save my web page. So I've now created this web page and I placed it below the About Us. So my page has been created. I'm able to go and create another one or go look at my list of created web pages. Before we do that, let's go and see how that looks on the public side of the site. So I'm just going to refresh my page. And now under here, we've got subpage for About Us that we just created. And this is showing us everything we just did. So as I mentioned, this WYSIWYG editor is exactly what we made on the inside is what we see on the outside, except for we actually see the video here. And I just want to point out that you can run this video directly in the web page itself. So regardless of where I've chosen to place this page or this video embedding, I'm able to watch it directly here on your site without having to go and watch it on YouTube. So I wanted to point out that as well. So here's our bulleted list that we put in. Here's our first table where we left the border sizes to that 1, and then our table below where the table exists, but we don't see any borders, we don't see any edges around here. So you can see how it arranged it in a nice grid, but it didn't create the lines in between. So just pointing out the differences in that border size being 0 versus border size being 1 or higher is going to change the way that that looks. So now I'm going to scroll to the very top. Up here, I've got, go look at our more content section. If I click this, it's going to bring the page up as high as it can so that I can get down to where that anchored content is. So my scroll wasn't too long. I certainly could have just scrolled down a little bit to see that, but pointing out that when I click on a link to a text in an anchor or link to an anchor, it's going to bring me down to that anchor and bring that section of information to the top of the page. And whether there's content below it or not, it's going to bring it so that it's visible on my page where I'm looking at it, as soon as I've clicked on it. So those are the elements that are going into our web page here. The other thing I'll point out is as I hover over About Us, it's got the sub pages that are directly in that menu, and I can click on any of these just to go directly to those pages. And as I do that, I can see in my left menu on my gold layout what those sub pages are. So I can see that under here I've got news, executive, and venues, so I can go directly to those items from this menu now that I'm already in one of the pages that's under here. So it keeps your content organized and easy to navigate to. So when registrants or when people are looking for content on your site, looking for information, they're going to be able to find it based on how you've organized your menu. My menu may be a little bit disorganized because I've got lots of, test things and whatnot in here. The About Us page is probably my #1 recommendation. If you don't already have one on your website, definitely go and create one, because in addition to it providing information about you as an organization, things like your mission statement, what you're all about, who sponsors you, whatever information is about you. It also gives you this area to tuck some very important items into that people might be looking for. I might really want to be interested in who your executive is. And so if I'm looking at your menu, I should be able to find that nice and easy. Where's the executive listing? Let me look at About Us. Oh, there it is. And so I'm able to find that. So that's one of the ways that you might find organizing your web pages in a way that you have nice areas to tuck like information underneath is going to help out the folks that are looking for that content on your site. So I'm going to hop back into the back end here now that we've taken a look at that website, and I'm going to click to, to our list of created web pages where we can see here. Now we've got a list where I can now edit the pages that exist here, and I can delete pages from here as well, including my not displayed on menu pages. What I want to point out as well is that we've got a reorder option, and we've got multiple reorder options because we have ordering options for the sub pages as well as the overall left to right of the entire menu. So if I select to reorder the top menu first row, I'm reordering exactly that. And it's not just including the web pages that exist that we just looked at creating, it's including the standard menu items that are also placed in my top menu first row. So I'm able to manipulate the entire menu from left to right to change the order so that it appears in the order that I want it to appear for my members when they come and visit my site. So About Us, and then Teams, and then Divisions, and then Standings. But if I wanted maybe my test page to be before About Us, this is where I can go and move that test page and move that up so that it appears first in the row, and then I can confirm that order. So you can move items up and down, and this would be the left to right order. So that's one part where I can reorder. If I choose to reorder within the About Us page, it's only going to allow me to reorder the sub pages that exist within that one page. So this is not my menu left to right. This is the menu for About Us, top to bottom. And so as we look, it's testing and then tap and then subpage and then news. This does include our news and executive and venues, which are standard menu items. So I'm able to reorder that. If I want venues to be the first thing that people see, when they click on that, I can do that and confirm that order. So right now, venues is last, but I just made that change. So we'll refresh, and now venues is first. So I'm able to really manipulate the order left to right and top to bottom for any of our sub pages so that they appear in the order that I want people to see them in, which obviously based on what kind of content you have, you'll know kind of what is more important to your members. What are people looking for when they come to your site, and how can you make it easy for them to find? So that is our web pages. That's a little bit start to finish with web pages, but I want to talk now about how did we get some of those standard menu settings in there. I clicked on the Goalline button here to get myself back to the master menu. And I can go back to this website section here and see my website content and settings options that are available in here. Because I'm talking about standard menu settings, I should go to the settings section, and we've got standard menu settings here. This shows me the Goalline standard items that I have enabled for this particular site. So you may not necessarily see all of the items that I see here. One major example is the officials login. If you're not using Goalline's advanced official system, this is not an item that you'll see in the standard item listing. But if you do have, and if you're not using registration, for example, you won't necessarily see registration forms or registration accounts. But generally speaking, most of these items you are going to see based on different configurations, news, events, executive listings, your email sign up options. So these are all kind of standard items, and you can choose using the bullets below whether you want it in the top menu first row by itself, or in the top menu second row, or if you want it not displayed in the menu at all. Not displayed, again, does not mean that it's not available at all. It just means that it's not displayed in the menu. The URL does still exist, but in a lot of cases, it's not going to be super easy to find unless you know exactly the path to that particular URL. So not displayed on menu is one option, and then place below a page. So placing it below a page is exactly what I've done for things like news, executive, and my venue listing. I've chosen to place it underneath the About Us page, but as you can see, I can select from any of my user-created web pages that I've created on this site. So my news archives is placed below About NEAOA. If we go and look at that, notice how it says news here, and it doesn't say news archives. So how did I do that? I edited the title, and editing the title of a standard menu item, again, I'm going to reiterate this, but it's a little bit common sense. It doesn't change what it is. It changes what the public menu title is for that item, but it does not change what the item is. And the example I'll use is you can't turn news into standings and have it point to standings. If you want standings, then if you're a league and you want standings, you can place standings in your menu, but you can't change the title of something and expect it to be something else. If I click to edit the title, it lets me change that public menu title. So instead of news archives, I can call it news. Maybe I want to call it old news. I can make that change. My site has some bilingual settings on it as well. So if your site also has bilingual settings, you may also see the public French menu title option here. And that just allows it so that when you toggle your site's language from English to French, it's using your user entered public menu title instead of using a translate function. It's it's just going to use whatever you put when people go to do to view the site in French. So the standard menu settings allows you to change the title of an item. Another common one that gets changed a lot is executive. If your organization calls it a board of directors, then you can easily just update this title to call it the board of directors. You can see maybe I've typed that in before. So you can use different menu titles for those items so that you're able to use the standard tools in Goalline, which generally speaking are going to save you lots of time and effort without having to, recreate web pages and create a list of your own set of directors. You're still able to go to the people section and add executives, and they're just going to show up listed as board members wherever you've chosen to place that item. So that's how we can edit the title of a standard menu item. Once you have your selections made in here and you save your settings, you are able yet again to go through and reorder from left to right. It's going to give you an option there to reorder the top or the second row. And then you can obviously click yourself back in to go back into to the settings here. There's a couple that I'll point out that you don't have all the same options with. And the reason for this is because these items that don't have a second row or a place below a web page option, these come with their own drop downs on the public side. And so we can't always place those underneath other existing web pages. And I'll just show you here. So my teams, these are all my rep teams, my association teams. And then these are all the divisions that I have, the division menu items that I've created in this site. And then same thing goes with standings. These have their own built-in. I didn't have to build these drop-down lists. All I did was created my teams and set them up in the menu groupings that I want them to appear in. And I'll show you briefly that in a moment here. One thing that I do point out a lot is that standings and divisions, if you manage leagues and you manage the standings, you don't necessarily want or need to put both of these items in your menu. There's some configuration options that are going to allow you to make your division landing page the standings page. Because if I just go to a standings page and I go to hockey, this is aggregating all of my hockey divisions and their current active schedule standings. But this isn't really where I'm going to go to interact with the league. And see other things like their schedule or, more specific game results or drill down to a team. If I go a different route and I use divisions and select hockey, it's going to show me the news here. And then I can select a specific division, and that division landing page can be configured to be the standings. And so using standings and divisions in your menu is a little bit of a duplication of effort, and the standings item by itself, for especially an organization with lots of divisions, might not be the best way to go. That would be great for organizations that are single league or that have a very distinct season. And if you are tracking individual stats, you're not losing the ability to go to a team menu, because if you're using individual stats, your standing pages will have an active hyperlink for your teams by default. So I can click on Purple Monkey Dishwasher and I can see the player stats for just that team by clicking to it from the standings. So this is using our standard menu settings for divisions and standings. So divisions and standings for me are both in my top menu first row. My recommendation to you is probably to use divisions instead. I don't really have leagues in my menu at all, but as you can see, I just was able to navigate very quickly and easily to all of the divisions that I have for hockey. Because my site is multi-sport, the divisions option made more sense in my menu. But if you're a single sport, then perhaps leagues is going to work for you because it can list the leagues for you. I'm going to exit out of here and go back into our website tool for a second, and we'll go to the settings, and I want to highlight a couple of things in site configuration. Site configuration is where some of these default settings are going to be to come into play. So I'm going to scroll down to a section here where I can change my front page display a little bit. So this is where I can choose what happens if I put divisions in my menu, because I have a mixture of rep teams and leagues, which is pretty common for clubs that also run their own house leagues, right? I can select here that I want either teams or leagues to be under the divisions menu item by using this drop down here to select leagues or teams. Typically speaking, the default is going to be fine for whatever style organization you are. But if your organization has changed over the years and you now do run more house leagues than you did before, then we can make an adjustment that makes sure that you have this option to select your divisions between leagues and teams. And the difference would be here, I'm just going to go back to the public side. These are my rep teams, and they show under teams. If I had selected that teams show up under divisions, then this would also be listing out my rep teams instead of listing out the different multi-sport options that I have. Your second menu row as well does have an option for if you happen to be a single team. So this would really only come into play if you are a single team organization, you only have one team, you can choose to place a team menu in that second menu row. And doing that lets you essentially just access the team-specific menu from the public side without having to drill down anywhere. You wouldn't have to click on anything else. When you get here, these items here would be these items just by default without having to make any changes. Just creating the team is going to kind of create that second menu row for you. It does take away your option to place other items in the second menu row. So keep that in mind if that's something that you're considering, because you would lose the ability to place these items in that second menu row. Your league homepage, this is where I've selected that I want my league homepage, when I click on a division, I want it to go to the standings page. I don't want it to go to news or schedule. I want it to go to the standings page. So if you currently find that when you select to go to a specific league that you're landing on news or schedule and you'd prefer to land on standings, site configuration, front page display is where you're going to go to make that change. Once you've made the change to the setting here, it will automatically update the public side. This is also an area where you can change the default view of a team schedule. League schedules are always going to show in a list view because there's so many items on any given day that the calendar view is not really conducive to a league. The team schedule, though, by default, you can set it to be a calendar view or a list view so that the user looking for their schedule doesn't have to change it to a calendar view themselves. So those are the settings that I wanted to point out in particular over here. There are lots of other settings in here. So if you ever find yourself having some free time and you want to take a look through what items could I maybe turn on in my site that I don't already have turned on. Photo galleries for both teams or the main menu association wide, you can turn these on or off here. When you turn them on or off here, they become features that can be interacted with and placed into the menu. They become standard menu items. Like what I have in my standard menu settings, I can do association photo galleries. There are some other options when it comes to scheduling on whether or not you want to show some certain items in your sidebars. Over here on my site, I have tonight's games and latest scores, upcoming games, and upcoming practices. This is where I can turn those on. If I don't want those to show, I don't have to. I can turn those off by saying no to these items. And that way they won't show up over there in that sidebar for me. This is something that you might want to do if you find yourself to be between seasons, or if you're just an organization that doesn't really want your site to be the place where people are going to get the schedule. It's fairly common for referee organizations to not want to show these modules because schedules might be inserted into the system, but they're there for referee assigning and not so much for people to go to your site and grab a schedule. The other things that might be useful is just being able to set your different form not available message. So by default, if your form's not available, it's just going to say this registration form is closed, contact an administrator. But if you want this to say something different, because you can configure your own message. So this can be something like the Northeast Athletic Association will be opening registration on July 10th. And so check back then. Or some message that instead of just seeing a generic "the form's not there" message, that they'd be able to see more information that you've provided to them. while we're in this setting, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom because on our gold layouts, the site configuration tool is how we configure those callout boxes that I referred to, that left, center, and right callout boxes. On the silver layout, this is going to use a different tool, and we'll hop into that in just a couple of minutes here. But I want to recall that these are kind of modules that we're talking about for that particular item. So let me go back to my home page here. These three callouts here, this is what we can manipulate in this particular tool. When you have a gold level site, the type is the first drop down that you have available. So what do you want to put in to this module? I'm currently using image upload with text, which is basically a free form. I pick the image, I pick the title that goes in as teaser text, and I click where it goes. And I have a drop-down list here, which includes all of my Goalline standard menu items and all of my Goalline user-created web pages. When I create this link and choose my image, it's going to populate itself like this. So what I have currently is image upload with text. I have my whistle. I have my referee login is the page it's going to go to, which happens to be a standard item. And my teaser text says referee login, which is exactly what we see here. And if I click on this, it takes me to the referee login. The next callout that I have configured happens to be an RSS feed. RSS feeds can be subscribed to the website that you want to pull information from has to provide the RSS feed link. So the feed address that goes in here, this is not something that Goalline generates for you. This is something that you would generate from the page that you want to receive information from. That being said, Goalline news pages do have RSS feeds available. So basically go to the site that you want the RSS feed to be pulling from, and then we attach /rss.php, and that's going to create an RSS feed. So if you want someone else to have an RSS feed for your news, they can use that. You would just find that RSS link and select the type to be an RSS news feed. The title text, you don't have to include so this has live updates, I guess. The other options could be that you can just have more news listed as an option here. If you're looking for something that's not available as a title option, that's something that you can reach out to our support team and we can see what we can do about that for you. But that is just one of the options. I'll just go through briefly kind of what the other options are. So next event and upcoming events, very similar things, but not exactly the same thing. Because next event is going to show you the next event. Upcoming events will show you a listing of upcoming events. Scores and games are exactly that. So reported games, upcoming practices, and you can choose up to 3 featured news articles. So featured article number 1 would mean that I've created a news article and it's featured number 1. And then I can again select what it is that I want my title text for that particular item to be. And it's going to populate that with content over here. So if I just take a look again at my homepage, I've got my live updates, which is RSS feeds. If I click on one of these, it's going to take me to where the news came from, which happens to be another Goalline site in this case, and I can see that news article right here. The other options is more news. This is one of my own articles. So when I click on this, it's taking me to my news article that I created and set as a featured article. So that's how our callout boxes are manipulated and adjusted for the gold layout. It isn't that entirely different on the silver layout, but the site configuration tool on silver is a little bit different. So again, this is silver. I'm going to go to the same place, website and site configuration. The same toggles are going to be available in here as far as things that you want enabled or not enabled as menu items, the association photo galleries, for example. But this is not where I manage my callout boxes. This is where I am going to manage that. So I'm going to click Launch Homepage Customization Tool. Lots of things that I can do in here. If I hover over things, they turn green. And when it turns dark green, it means I can edit it. So if I want to edit the ad that shows up here, or if I want to edit the number of news articles showing here, I can do this. So if I click here, it's just going to say, how many do you want to rotate through? And I can choose anywhere from 1 to 10 to show on that news slider. If I click on the background image, it's going to let me change that background image where I can choose to upload a new picture from my computer. There are some pixel recommendations there for you to follow just to make sure that it's going to show up and display properly. But that's one of the things you can do there. With the silver layout, you're able to enable and disable various modules, and you're able to change around the number of modules that are available. So what I want to call out here is that right now we see 3 of these boxes, but this could be 2 boxes. It could be 3 boxes, or it could be 4 boxes. I'll just show you an example here of a published website that has the 4 boxes here. And these are using a variety of news articles to go into those boxes. You can move things around so that, for example, if I want goals leaders to be up in my top call out box section, I can do that by going and using the drag and drop modules over here. When we scroll down to this section here, there are 8 small modules, and that's because we have the 2x4 grid selected, but we can change this to the 4 rows, which is what we've seen on some of those other published websites here. Using the 2x4 grid gives me a lot more modules of content where I can drop things into. Sometimes that's a little overwhelming if you don't have a lot of content, but that's why we have all these great options that you can place into these modules. So placing items into the modules uses the menu that's over here on the side. So it's grouped into different communication sections or scheduling or statistics modules. So these, the communication sections, almost identical to what we were seeing when it comes to what the end result of the call out box option is in the gold layout, but you can just drag and drop specific articles. And then what happens is, as you create more articles, every module that contains a news article, it just kind of bumps down and sort of moves through time for you. Again, we have next event modules where you can place the next event going on in there. Image upload with text. This one is a little different on the silver layout. So if I use image upload with text and I bring it up to where I want to put it, I can give it my own title. And then I can use, I can either use an existing photo if I've already used photos, or I can upload my own photo. And as you can see here, the URL is a free form. So this is what makes it a little bit more flexible than the gold layout, because the gold layout callout boxes allow you to use image upload with text, but it only allows you to link between your own user created web pages or standard menu items. This URL option is a free form. Type in your URL, so it could be anything. It doesn't have to be contained within your Goalline site. So it makes it a little bit more flexible in that sense. So I wanted to point out that option specifically, but then I want to scroll down here and show you a few other things that you can do. Embedding YouTube videos, this can be done directly into these modules. And when I want to embed a YouTube video, let's see here, I think I still have my text copied from that video before. So I can place this directly into one of these modules, and it's going to show up for us on the public side when we go and look at that. I've published my changes there just so that I can go and take a quick peek and see how now we've manipulated and changed this over. So I might need to look into what I did there with my video entry there. It might be that my module's the wrong size, but dragging and dropping your video options into wherever it is that you want to move those items into. We can also do Facebook widgets, Twitter feeds, and things like that on the silver layout. When it comes to scheduling and statistics modules, this is really where a lot of content can be updated and populated, and really awesome for your members to go and see without you having to do a whole lot of work to get it done. By dragging and dropping a points leader into any of these modules, all I need to do now is my day-to-day job of reporting the games that we have anyway, and this is going to automatically start tabulating points leaders for me. And it's going to automatically show the list of who's first, second, third, and all all of that. So using the statistics and scheduling modules, you're able to move things around and place whatever you want in whatever section that you'd like. When you do open these up, the stats here, because I have multi-sport, I see a lot of different sport options and sport-specific terminology. But if you're a single sport, then you're just going to see the statistics modules that matter to you. So you can drag and drop whatever it is that you want into any of your different modules for different divisions as well. So if you have more than one division in a specific sport, you can choose that it's going to be this league and that stat instead of overall and that type of thing. So the modules that you can place in your silver are going to be done through the remote control is what I usually refer to it as on the side here, and that lets you drag and drop those items in and create them so that the public website then looks however you want it to look. And there's so many different configuration options that you can choose to place in here and have lots of different content. The idea is once you've configured your menu so that people know how to navigate to where they want to go, that it's just going to be an easy site for them to use. The one last thing that I will show, and I know we're coming close to the end of time, is just how to manipulate the menu groups for your teams and your leagues, because those do show up as standard menu items and they don't always show up maybe in the order you want, and maybe you want to manipulate the way the groups exist. So in your scheduling section from the master menu, you should have an option for either or both manage association teams and manage leagues. Again, you may not have both, which is totally fine. It's just a matter of what type of organization you are. When we look at our association team listing or the league listing, you can see that you can have different menu groups. And when you have those menu groups, you can have specific teams in those groups, and then you can edit the name of the group. So if I want this to be U14 rep, I can save that, and that's now the menu group title. I can reorder the way the teams appear in that menu group as well, so that they appear from top to bottom the way I want them to appear. Not only does this adjust the public side, it also adjusts your team listing here. So when you have, I just changed it, and now I can see my heading here of U14 rep. So this menu grouping for your teams and your leagues helps on the public side for people to be able to drill down into what they're looking for. It also helps you as an administrator just to group those things in a more logical order. What I often see is things grouped from youngest to oldest, and then within the youngest, from lowest or highest skill to lowest skill, if you have like AAA, A, B, C, and that kind of thing. Other times you'll see it as girls and boys, and then again by age. So however you want to order the groups, and then however you want to order the teams or leagues within those groups is going to be done from the manage leagues or the manage association teams section. And that will directly associate itself with the standard menu settings that you've selected in your standard menu settings option here, as far as where am I going to put divisions, where am I going to put teams. So if I have teams under divisions, maybe I just get rid of teams now because they're going to flow through divisions because I changed my site configuration. Lots of content in today's webinar. I think a little bit more than even I anticipated when I decided to put this particular topic on. But I think it really is a great way for you to take advantage of the menu that you have in your Goalline site, regardless of which layout that you have. The other thing I'll note is that if you're interested in changing your website layout, either you have silver and you'd prefer gold, or vice versa, you can reach out to us and let us know that you're interested in taking a look, and we can get the ball rolling there for you to change that layout to whatever makes the most sense for your organization and how you see the best fit. What I often mention is if you've got a lot of content, silver is going to be great. If you don't have a lot of content, silver could be overwhelming, and the gold is a nice, concise way for you to still be able to control the content and the way people navigate without having to worry about having too much to do or having the page be too busy. So those are just some general tips there. Just making sure I touched on everything here. We looked at site configuration and standard menu settings and a deep dive into creating those web pages so that you can create those and get your menus configured in a way that makes sense to you. So thanks so much for joining today. I didn't see any questions throughout the chat. If you do have questions after today's webinar, go ahead and reach out to our support team, Goalline support at stacksports.com, or check out the help pages at faq.goalline.ca or our knowledge base that you can access by the contact us page in there. So thanks again for your time. Appreciate it, and hope to see you again next time.